Hi everyone, so this video is going to be a full process for watercolor illustration, starting from an initial sketch and then going all the way to final details and stuff like that. It's a simple landscape of a few rocks by an ocean on a cloudy day. It's from imagination, so it's relatively simple, but yeah, this painting was something that I really struggled with because for the longest time it just wasn't turning out the way that I wanted it to, which you'll see later on in the video. I go through a really muddy stage where everything's just kind of unclear, but yeah, I guess we'll get to it. Right now I'm just laying down the initial sketch, putting down details on the rocks and stuff like that, and then here I am transferring that sketch onto my watercolor paper using a light box. A light box was one of the investments for my art that I really think made making watercolor illustrations and just final pieces in general a lot easier. It was relatively cheap, so you're not spending a fortune on it or anything. But yeah, this just made it easier to transfer my sketches onto watercolor paper, which previously I had to go to like my window and then hope it was a sunny day and then just press really hard and try and make out whatever details of the sketch I could. But with a light box, I can just put my sketch underneath my paper and then it's easy to transfer. And then here I am making a few color studies for my painting just to see what kind of colors I want. I believe I ended up going with the first color just because, I mean, that's what I usually do. But it's always nice to make extra color studies just in case you stumble upon something that you really like and you wouldn't have known if you just gone with your first attempt at color. Here I'm using the Reeves watercolors, I believe. I will link the exact model down below. They're honestly not great, but if you're just starting out with watercolor and you want to practice your water mixing, your colors, not water mixing, color mixing, your water controls, stuff like that, they're nice to try out. The reason why I say they're not good is because student grade watercolors, especially like the really cheap ones like Reeves or like Crayola or whatever, they are, I believe, made using like synthetic pigment, so you won't be able to get the rich, vibrant colors or the dark colors that you want in your washes. And I think that's something that really hindered this painting because I wanted it to have a really moody feel and I just wasn't able to get the darkness that I wanted in my painting. I mean, maybe part of that is my own fault because I usually go for really light washes and I get scared. But yeah, I think that part of it was the fact that these pigments aren't going to be very vibrant or dark. Here is when I actually start the painting. It's always nice to start a watercolor painting because in the beginning, especially if your sketch is nice, then you think that, you know, everything is possible, I guess. You're not in the ugly stage yet, so yeah, you're just having a fun time, you know, playing with watercolors. The ugly stage for watercolors, I think, is easier to get through than something like gouache because it's semi-transparent or transparent. And with gouache, it's just like your sketch is gone. With watercolor, at least your sketch is still there. So if it's nice, you can be like, you know, I can just come back. But yeah, the ugly stage for this painting lasted a really long time because there was just no contrast and what I wanted for this painting just wasn't turning out. So yeah, you can see here that I'm using really light washes and that's probably something that didn't help me in the long run with my frustrations in this piece. I laid down 3 washes of Payne's Gray and you can't even tell, it just looks like the paper is wet. Oh, the paper, I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but it's Strathmore cold press, 140 pounds I think. It's nice paper. For my purposes, it takes water well. I want to try using hot press watercolor paper because sometimes I like to use watercolors in my sketchbook and that's not like specifically watercolor paper, it's just mixed media paper, but it has a smooth surface that I really like with paints. Cold press is a little more textured, so that's nice, but it's good to try new things. I actually ordered a hot press watercolor sketchbook, 100% cotton, and I'm excited to try that out. Along with that, I ordered some Daniel Smith watercolors. Yeah, I finally caved and I spent the big bucks, but hopefully using those paints it'll be easier to get the colors that I want, and I won't be so frustrated with my paintings, and everything will just be easier. So I'm just waiting for those to come. Pretty excited. Here I'm laying down some more color, trying to go back over those faded spots because they're really faded. Here is when I think I started panicking because everything just looks the same. There's not really any contrast in anything. The colors kind of look fake. Like, there's not really any depth to them, I guess. I don't really know how to explain it. But I'm not quite at the oh no, what's happening stage, because my sketch is still there. The washes are still really light, so it's, there's still hope. Just laying down some colors. This painting is a landscape, but I really want to get into painting people and characters, because something that I've always wanted to do for a long time is get into painting comics. Not painting comics, but just making comics. That's going to require me getting better at digital art, there's a really steep learning curve. I have a screenless tablet right now. I think it's a Wacom Intuos. It's really small. I got it when I was pretty young. And I think that there's just something about the screen-hand disconnect that's really making me struggle with my digital art, but it's not like I can exactly, drop $600 on a Cintiq right now, because I'm gonna go to college next year, and in this economy, I want to save as much money as I can. Anyway, I want to get into comics, but there's a lot that I still need to learn. Digital art for one. Also, just, getting better at anatomy and gesture drawing. I still have some trouble drawing things from imagination, so I'm gonna need to get better at that. It's a process, but yeah, I really want to get into painting characters as well, like incorporating them into my watercolor paintings. I have some trouble with painting characters because they always look like they're out of place from the environment. They don't really match at all, but yeah, I guess I can learn. Here is where things start to get kind of ugly. Like, the colors are all running together, and they're all pretty much the same color. There's not really any contrast. I think I was kind of panicking at this stage, because things just weren't turning out, and that's always frustrating when your art just isn't going the way that you want it to. Anyway, back to comic art. I've always had, ideas for stories in my head for making comics ever since I was really little. It's just something that I like to think about, and it's something that, again, I really want to be able to do one day, but I think there's still a lot that I need to learn as an artist before I get there. Anyways, so more news, I guess. There's not really much to talk about in this painting right now, but as I mentioned before, I'm going to college next year, and my college recently came out with its plan for COVID reopening. We're on the quarter system, so it's really strange, I guess, because only half of the undergraduates can be on campus at a time, and we're not gonna get roommates or anything, and I understand that this is necessary due to social distancing protocol and not getting the virus and stuff like that. But I guess it's just gonna be frustrating because my freshman year college experience is gonna be, so different, and I guess it's gonna be okay. honestly. It's gonna be different, but we're gonna pull through. A little more about the response for my college. Basically, you have to choose schooling 3 of the 4 quarters like usual, but if freshmen want to have 2 quarters on campus, then they have to choose summer quarter as one of their quarters. So I think that I'm not going to do that just because I kind of want to have a summer break, you know, and I think that I couldn't do 4 quarters of like sophomore year. I think that I would just burn out, especially if I'm going to be doing an internship during my sophomore summer. Anyway, so here I'm going to the water. It's something that you can see. I'm just like going over and erasing essentially all of the lines that I did because I didn't like them. The water, I'm actually happy with how it turned out in the end, but right now it kind of looks like a hot mess. And then I'm trying to add more depth to the sky, but it's like not really working because my washes are too light or the pigment's too faded, and the rocks don't have like any definition to them at all. I'm trying to add more darkness and see if that helps, but they kind of just look messy and muddy. I used a little bit of gold paint for the plants at the side. I believe those are the Kuretake Gansai Tambi. They're really nice. I really like the way that they sparkle. They take a little while to activate, but once they do activate, it's like really smooth and I enjoy them a lot. Here I'm just adding more color to the sky in an attempt to make it darker. It's not really getting darker, but you know, maybe it'll get there. I think at this point, it's actually when I asked my mom to come over and tell me, okay, so what's wrong with this painting? Because it's always good to get a second opinion. And I believe what she said is the rocks in the foreground don't look like rocks at all because they don't have any definition. And you know what? She was right. Here I'm just going in with some white gouache to add a little bit of color to the ocean, just like some highlights and stuff. And then I decided to go in and add a few islands on the edge just to balance out the composition of the painting. I think I needed some background elements, going in with the sky again, making it darker. And then here I think soon, maybe, perhaps, I think I'm just adding more sky here, but soon things are gonna start turning around. We'll get there soon. Yeah, I'm just trying to make this darker a little bit. Not really much is going on right now. Adding in some more color to the rocks in an attempt to, you know, bring some contrast in, but that's not really what I needed. They just needed definition. Yeah, I think the style of watercolor that I enjoy is building up washes that have hard edges, so not like blending them in. They just kind of look like they're, you know, oil painted, except they're watercolor. Oh, actually, here was when I asked my mom. Not before. I just took a break before, I think, to let my paint dry. I'm adding in some gouache to the rocks, you know, just to tie the piece together. And then here is when things start to turn around. When I get out my color pencils and I start to add definition to the rocks, that's when the painting went from, okay, this is a hot mess, to, you know what, this can be pretty good. I'm just going in, defining the rocks, making them stand out a little bit more, outlining my sketch that I did in pencil with my color pencil. And here you can see that they're starting to look like real rocks and not just blobs of color. I'm adding in some rocky details as well, like little crags and stuff like that. I think that that's something that really helped tie this painting together and make it look more realistic. I'm going in with a second color here, just for some contrast, and then outlining more stuff. And then this is when I started to, you know, actually like my painting, say maybe that this wasn't like a whole wasted experience. I really like using white gouache to add some details in my watercolor paintings, like these clouds and then reflections on the rocks. Reflections? I don't know. Highlights on the rocks, maybe parts of the ocean. White gouache is just really fun. Gouache in general is kind of hard though, actually. I think because of its opacity, it's so different from watercolor, but like so similar, so I keep wanting to treat it like watercolor, but then it just doesn't behave like watercolor. And then I get to the ugly phase and give up because my sketch is gone and I'm like, oh no, what do I do? But yeah, I need to work on that. White gouache though, it's pretty fun. Here I'm just adding in a few final details to these rocks and everything, making them look rocky. I think that the painting looks pretty good right now. The colors look more vibrant on camera than they do in real life. Like in real life they're kind of dull, but on camera they look pretty good, so that's nice. And then because I couldn't resist, I think that pretty soon I'm going to be adding in some gold watercolor to the rocks as well. But first I gotta darken the sky even more because, you know, can't be dark enough. I finally got some of the darks that I wanted near the edges of the painting, but mostly not really. Yeah, here I'm just adding in that gold detail. I really like the way that the gold turned out actually. It looks very nice. And then final touches. I think that sometimes I have a tendency to overwork things. Like when they seem nice, I'll just keep going and then they end up looking bad because I'm like, you know, this could be better, but it really couldn't. I think that I stopped myself this time though, just adding the right amount of detail instead of going overboard. So that's good. Adding in some final touches here. Again, I think I've said that like many times already, I've lost track. Just defining the ocean a little bit more. Okay, so here is the final completed illustration. I hope you like it. It was frustrating at first, but I think I pulled through, managed to make it look good. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.